Slovenia. From glittering caves to magnificent waterfalls, enchanting mountainscapes to pastoral villages. For its small size, Slovenia packs a mighty punch. Follow us on our journey along the exposed ridge hikes and scenic backcountry roads of this natural gem. Road trip through Slovenia started in the northwest of the country. It did not take long until we feasted our eyes on the mist-shrouded rock faces of the Julian Alps. This mountain range is home to the highest peaks in Slovenia, many of which stand more than 2,500 meters tall. Even though the low-hanging clouds veiled the proud peaks, this only heightened our anticipation of what was to come. Other than jagged mountains, the area around Planica is also famous for its ski jumps. Jumping hills of different sizes cater to any level of experience. Even in late summer, it is possible to train here as the hills are equipped with a plastic matting system. Of all the winter sports, ski jumping is among the most daring. To compete, athletes race down a ski tower before pushing off on the jump. Depending on the size of the hill, athletes will achieve different jump lengths. On the largest one, their attempts easily exceed 130 meters. These arguably impressive numbers are completely dwarfed by ski flying. The local record for the longest flight is a staggering 252 meters. Racing down such a large hill on two wooden sticks is undoubtedly both brilliant and completely bonkers. The following morning we got up early to experience the sunrise at Zelenci Nature Reserve. This protected marshland is mostly famous for its luminous green-blue lake. Several clear springs bubble up from the chalk layers beneath, giving the water its characteristic color. For a few moments, a shaft of fiery yellow sunlight broke through the clouds, perfecting this hyper-naturalistic painting. Continuing our journey, we drove up the most winding road in Slovenia. This particular road leads up to a high alpine mountain pass. 50 switchbacks later, we arrived on the other side of the pass, where we were greeted by an almost translucent creek. This small stream was only a first taste of the region's aquatic wonders. Shortly after, we beheld the Soča. The river's vibrant color casts a spell on every visitor. On a sunny day, the water shimmers intensely, but even when the sky is overcast, the Soča loses little of its magic. After emerging from a mountain spring, the river makes its way through a narrow rock passage. In its later course, the stream starts to widen, making it a favorite playground among water sports enthusiasts.
This is really far from the ideal conditions to start a climb towards the highest peak of Slovenia, because it is already past 5 p.m. and it has been raining all day. Still is drizzling actually, but nonetheless I'm on my way towards a mountain hut before I will try to summit the peak tomorrow morning. The reason for me doing this hike now and not in a couple of days is that now in September the weather is noticeably cooling down, and the weather forecast shows up to 60 centimeters of snow on the summit in a couple of days and temperatures as low as minus 19 degrees. So I figured it is either now or never to climb to the summit of Slovenia's highest mountain.
Starting out towards Triglav from the western side, I pass through a valley before ascending through the woods. Sometime later, the leaves of the forest gave way to a rocky trail.
I have to say that I'm rather pleased with my planning so far, because I've made really good progress on the steep switchback climb, and now I can already see the mountain hut ahead of me, so I should definitely reach it before nightfall. And additionally, the sun has come out just as the weather forecast predicted, and now it is bathing this mountain landscape in a beautiful light, which makes this part of the hike extremely beautiful. And as bonus, which wasn't planned, I've just seen an ibex, so beautiful evening and beautiful climb so far.
Having exhausted all its energy in a spectacular play of light, the sun eventually set behind the mountains.
Good morning from the side of the mountain. It is just before 6 a.m, so properly early start today. Still pretty much dark outside and rather cold, but I think I'm the first one that set out from the hut today. It's about 3 kilometers left to the summit, and with the conditions as they are, clear skies, I'm hoping for a really nice sunrise. So, fingers crossed.
It wasn't long before the veil of darkness lifted and the landscape was illuminated by a warm light. Now the only thing standing between me and the summit were a few climbing sections.
I've made it to the top of the highest peak of Slovenia, and best of all, I'm all alone here. No one else, and as far as I've heard, that is a pretty rare occurrence. So far there's a cloud lingering around the summit and it's veiling some of the mountains around me, but I'll just stay here for maybe half an hour, try to soak in the beautiful scenery before heading back down safely.
With each minute that passed, the wisps of cloud became more fleeting, revealing large parts of the surrounding landscape. At 2,864 meters, Triglav towers above all other peaks in the Julian Alps. In a sense, the mountain is the embodiment of the Slovenian nation. It is not only depicted on the country's flag, but also plays a fundamental role in Slovenia's national identity. Capturing that sentiment, local tradition proclaims that every Slovenian must climb Triglav at least once in their lifetime. fair share of the summit, I started the long descent into the valley. Resting my legs, we spent the remainder of the day reading along the banks of the Soča. The next morning we set out towards the highest mountain road in the country. The Mangart road is both narrow and winding, requiring a lot of concentration. Over the course of 12 kilometers, 17 switchbacks and 5 tunnels, it leads up to almost 2,000 meters above sea level. At the top, we were greeted by a fabulous view of the nearby mountains. Without a doubt, this road offers one of the most convenient options to experience Slovenia's alpine scenery. All of a sudden, wafts of fog floated up from the valley. In a matter of seconds, large parts of the landscape were buried under a thick layer of cloud. Descent, the dense fog added another layer of difficulty to the already challenging road. Our next destination was an exceptional waterfall. Streaming down a mossy hillside, Slovenia drops 20 meters into a colorful pool. In comparison, the Boka waterfall is not quite as dazzling, but significantly larger. The trifecta of falling water was completed by Slap Kozjak. Set in a natural rock bowl, it was not only the forceful stream that captured our attention, but also the plant-covered rocks. Eager to explore some lesser-known roads, we embarked on a bumpy backcountry trail. Eventually, we arrived at a pass from where we had a far-reaching vista. From this point on, the trail led along a windswept mountainside free of trees. That allowed us to gain a good view of the valley below, as well as the path ahead. As it turned out, this was extremely useful, as long sections of the track were so narrow that it would have been impossible to pass another vehicle. Unlike the small mountain trails, the Slovenian border ridge road is mostly tarred. This road is certainly interesting for its views, but even more so for its history. At the beginning of World War I, Italian troops built fortified positions on the ridgeline. The fiercest battles raged in October 1917, when German troops stormed the hills. Today, the trenches, command posts and machine gun positions can be visited as part of an outdoor museum. Throughout the day, we continued to explore narrow trails before the long forecasted weather front caught up with us. In the mountains, the storm brought ample snowfall. Given these unpleasant conditions, I was glad that I was far away from the summit of Triglav. At the same time, this inhospitality was somehow alluring. Setting out on a hike through Triglav National Park, it did not take long until I reached the snow line. Initially, the scene resembled a winter wonderland. However, the storm soon returned with newfound force. As I continued to climb higher, the going became increasingly unpredictable as snowdrifts completely covered the trail.
Sometime in the last 2 weeks, we somehow managed to skip an entire season, namely autumn, because we went from 30 degrees and summertime wearing t-shirts on mountain peaks to walking through knee-deep snow and 5 degrees or less. And that is quite a harsh change, I'm not gonna lie.
Needless to say, I met almost no other hikers, but I did spot some wildlife. When I reached a minor summit, a full-blown snowstorm raged across the landscape. As the conditions seemed likely to deteriorate even further, prudence prevailed and I decided to not climb any higher. At lower elevations, such as Lake Bohin, the weather was merely moody. The previous precipitation had a noticeable effect on Slovenia's most famous waterfall though. Slavsarica was a roaring spectacle that drenched every visitor. No less tumultuous were the many brooks and creeks in the vicinity. Streaming down through a rain-soaked forest, their waters converged in lush river canyons. A major highlight of our time on the eastern side of the national park was the visit to several alpine hamlets. These historic settlements are a vivid reminder of Slovenian pastoral traditions. All of the houses share a wooden architecture with sloping roofs. A particularly delightful settlement can be found at Planina Zajamniki. This alpine pasture has been used by herdsmen for centuries. Many of the clustered buildings have been preserved and are still in use today. Once the snow melts in spring, livestock is driven up to feast on the fresh grass. Both animals and herders stay on the pasture throughout the summer and only move down when temperatures plummet in autumn. The most unusual of all the villages we visited was the one on Planina Zajamniki. The wooden chalets of this hamlet look like they are strung together on a necklace of pearls. Additionally, the huts are set in a fantastic landscape, offering a vista of both Lake Bohin as well as Triglav. As afternoon turned to evening, the sun rewarded our patience by bursting through the clouds. From time to time, even these snow-clad peaks were touched by rays of sunshine. We drove northwards along small forest trails. It did not take long until we reached one of Slovenia's most famous attractions. Framed by mountains on all sides, Lake Bled is exceptionally picturesque. Adding to its scenic appeal, a medieval castle towers above its northern shore. The greatest attraction, however, is Bled Island. Several buildings have been erected on this small rock, the tallest of which is a 52-meter-high church tower. In addition to the lake, the area is also known for several canyons. The wild Pokljuka Gorge, for example, entices with 40-meter-high walls and large cave openings. This canyon was formed by a glacial river about 10,000 years ago. After the water receded, it left behind a fossilized gorge, which can now be explored on an exciting hiking trail. Driving deeply into a mountain dale, another highlight was waiting just ahead. In our opinion, Slaperichnik is the country's most bewitching waterfall. The 50-meter-high fall thunderously drops down a rocky outcrop, spraying water far and wide. What makes it even more special is the fact that you can walk behind it. Furthermore, the water did not tumble down in just a single spot, but rather formed a curtain of dancing water droplets that shimmered beautifully in the sunlight. In the preceding week, we had almost circumnavigated Triglav National Park, but now it was time to head inland. One of the places we visited was Grad Kamen. This hilltop fortress was first mentioned in 1263 and continuously fortified in the following centuries. However, in the 1700s the castle was abandoned and gradually fell into ruin. Even though humans left the building ages ago, other inhabitants gladly took over. Ljubljana, on the other hand, is very much alive and kicking. As the capital of Slovenia, this city is the political, economic and cultural center of the country. Despite that, Ljubljana retains the character of a small town that can easily be explored on foot. The city is especially well known for its many bridges that span the local river. Moreover, countless historic buildings are reminders of its eventful past. While most of them are visually appealing, the same cannot be said about the country's parliament or the nearby Congress Center. Luckily, the city's most important building outshines all others. Towering on a hill, Ljubljana Castle is a key landmark that offers far-reaching views. 50 kilometers southwest of the capital, we also visited one of the country's most popular tourist sites. Postojnska Jama is a karst cave system that was formed by a river millions of years ago. So far, scientists have measured this subterranean wonderland to be at least 24 kilometers long. Tourists can visit the first 5 kilometers, of which 3.5 are traveled by train. A trip to this large show cave is neither peaceful nor overly adventurous, but the captivating rock formations are more than worth it. Ranging from thin, spaghetti-like needles to massive rock columns, the formations come in all shapes and sizes. Every single one of them originates from rainwater that slowly seeped through the rock. Over time, sediments in the water accumulate on both the ceiling and floor through a process of continuous dripping. The result is a fascinating world of rock curtains, stalactites and stalagmites. Not far away, Predjama Castle is another place of interest. This castle was built under a natural rock arch and has remained virtually unchanged since 1570. In comparison, Riechenberg Castle experienced a more turbulent history, as the building was torched by partisans in 1944. Since the 1980s, restoration work has been undertaken to return this hilltop fortress to its former glory. Slowly leaving the mountains behind, the land became undulating and dotted with plenty of quaint villages. Our further journey brought us to the southwestern corner of the country. Along the way, we saw many vineyards that bear witness to the wine-growing tradition of the region. Eventually, we arrived at our destination, the shores of the Adriatic Sea. With a total length of 46 kilometers, Slovenia's coastline is rather short. Other than in neighboring Italy, you won't find any sandy beaches here. Additionally, from autumn onwards, strong winds whip up over the water. Nonetheless, some parts of the coast are rather charming. Premier among those is the Moon Bay. Here, the cliffs drop up to 80 meters to the sea, where they are met by a relentless barrage of waves. Another must-visit along the coast is the town of Piran. From the 13th to the 18th century, the city was governed by the Republic of Venice before being annexed by the Austrian Empire. Up to the end of the Second World War, Piran was almost exclusively inhabited by Italians, which explains its characteristic architecture. With its red roofs and narrow alleys, this town could just as well be found in Italy. Fortunately, Piran mostly escaped the turmoils of the 20th century and has retained much of its historic charm. Leaving the coast behind, we headed inland, sticking predominantly to backcountry trails. Of course, we also explored the nearby mountains, but the autumn weather still had a firm grip on the summits. Equally, some of the forest roads were shrouded in a blanket of mist.
I am standing along the shore of the largest lake of Slovenia, but in fact we are quite lucky to actually see some water, because this is a so-called intermittent lake, meaning that some times of the year the water completely disappears. Specifically, this would be during hot and dry summers when there's very little rainfall and the water seeps down to the underground caverns that feed the lake. During that time a lot of vegetation arises and the area is even used for agriculture. But now later in the year, in autumn, rainfall has picked up again, the water has started to rise and we can once more behold the largest lake of the country.
After heavy rains, Cerkniško jezero can swell up to a size of 38 square kilometers and reach a depth of 10 meters. Locals use these water-rich periods to catch fish, whereas the dry spells are perfect for grain cultivation and hay farming. Similar to the bottom of the lake, the surrounding landscape is dotted with caverns. Especially noteworthy is Rakov Škocjan. This karst gorge is characterized by several natural bridges that were formed when the cave ceiling collapsed. For millions of years, a river has shaped this landscape and its work appears far from finished. Climbing down to the water level is a perfect opportunity to experience this geological artwork. As part of the adventurous trail, we walked through several tunnels and over a man-made bridge. The reward for braving these slippery rocks was a fantastic view of nature's craftsmanship. Back on the road, we continued our journey through the little visited south of the country. Closely hugging the border to Croatia, we followed the course of the Kolpa. This calm stream forms the border between the two countries over a length of 100 kilometers. On a quiet morning, its shores are an ideal spot to soak in the sounds of nature.
This large woodland in the south of Slovenia is arguably even more wild than the rest of the country. And a good way to judge that is by looking at the roads it took us to get here, always very small and winding gravel roads. But this remoteness, of course, has a huge benefit for wildlife because plenty of species are still thriving here. Among other things, we've already spotted an owl, a fox, a mouse, and we heard a stag roar through half the night. But even more impressively, this is also the habitat of brown bears, because up to 300 of these majestic animals still live in Slovenia. Of course, the chances of seeing them are rather low, but then you never know. One may just be waiting around the corner.
This densely forested karst range reaches its highest point at Veliki Rog. Aside from woodlands, there are also numerous castles in the south of the country. Standing out from many others is Grad Otočec, a water castle that was built on a small island. The building dates back to the 13th century but did not escape destruction during the Second World War. Following its restoration, it now houses a luxury hotel. Moreover, we also ventured into lush gorges that are rarely visited by tourists. Some of these can only be explored on challenging paths that require a good deal of balance. However, the countless cascading waterfalls were an excellent reason to brave the climb. Animals such as the slowworm equally cherish the local habitat. These earth-dwelling creatures much resemble a snake, but are actually classified as legless lizards. With the day drawing to an end, we celebrated the return of the sun, which flooded the landscape with a glorious light. Undoubtedly among Slovenia's most beautiful cities is Ptuj. On a clear day, the historic buildings are perfectly reflected in the slow-flowing Drava. Its first written mention was in 69 AD, which makes Ptuj the country's oldest recorded town. Continuously pushing east, we enjoyed the lovely sunshine on secluded forest paths. Our goal was to drive all the way to the northeastern corner of the country, where a tri-point marks the border between Slovenia, Austria and Hungary. From here on, the only direction to continue was westwards. Sometime later, we arrived in Slovenia's second largest city. Just like Ptuj, Maribor lies along the Drava River. With its charming old town and rich cultural heritage, the city is a worthwhile stop on a road trip. West of town, the Pohorje Mountains are a favorite recreational area. Multiple well-maintained hiking trails lead deep into the woods. Some of these end up at tumbling waterfalls. Others provide a view of tree-fringed bog lakes. Particularly enchanting is a peat bog at one of the highest points in the region. Here, the landscape is made up of small lakes that can be beheld from a boardwalk. Embedded in a sea of dwarf pines, these lakes are a source of outstanding beauty. Driving further west, we quickly started to reapproach the Alps. Often described as the most stunning valley in Slovenia, Logarska Dolina is the result of glacial activity. Most of the towering peaks in the area can be climbed on extended hikes. Compared to that, Slaprinka is much easier to reach. This waterfall is very eye-catching, not least because of its 90-meter drop. Sticking to small gravel trails, we savored the glorious weather. These conditions also proved ideal for climbing up to another mountain peak. On my way to the summit of Raduha, I was treated to a splendid panorama.
It has been roughly a week ago since this heavy early season snowfall covered the peaks of the Alps under a thick blanket of snow. But in the last couple of days, the weather in Slovenia has been really warm and sunny, and as a result, most of the snow has melted again. Even here at 2,000 meters elevation, there are only a couple of traces left, but that is really good news for me because it will allow me to attempt to summit one of the more prominent peaks of the country in the next couple of days.
For the moment, however, I simply delighted in the view. Unsurprisingly, the next day brought ominous skies, which quickly resulted in a deluge of rain. Luckily, things looked much better the following morning, when I went on one last hiking trail.
I have just spotted 4 ibex on the trail directly ahead of me. So I will try to walk as quietly as possible so that I can sneak up a little on them, and hopefully that will allow me to get a really good look.
These 4 males showed no signs of fear, which can be partially explained by the fact that adult ibex have no natural predators. However, in the past, humans drove these animals almost to extinction. Only 100 individuals survived in Italy in the early 19th century, which have since then repopulated the Alps. Still, there are no more than 300 ibex in Slovenia, which makes seeing them a major highlight.
This is such a magical moment right now. These beautiful creatures do not seem to be disturbed by my presence at all. 2 of them are peacefully feeding above me, while the other 2 are resting behind me. And now the atmosphere has become really mystical because a cloud has moved up from the valley below and it is veiling the landscape in this grey and monotone colors. But wow, what an experience.
Encountering a single ibex requires a lot of luck. Encountering 2 herds in a single day is almost off the charts. The second group I spotted included both males with their majestically backward curving horns, as well as females and their offspring. Just like the others, these animals were peacefully feeding on a mountain flank. Watching these marvelous creatures in their natural habitat gave me a feeling of pure joy. We dearly hope that Slovenia will continue its long-term conservation efforts so that the King of the Alps may continue his reign. Feeling deeply blessed, I carried on towards the summit. As it turned out, my lucky wildlife encounters were not yet over. This alpine salamander was impossible to miss, as it was resting directly on the path.
I think it is safe to say that the weather report wasn't entirely accurate when it predicted sunshine for today, because here at the summit I'm completely surrounded by clouds and I cannot make out anything of the possibly beautiful surroundings. But from time to time the sun does peek through. The clouds just haven't lifted yet, but I'll linger for a while, maybe I'll get a glimpse, and then I will continue in this direction towards the next summit.
Undaunted, I kept going, taking the ridge path from Grintovec to Skuta. At several points, the lofty trail resembled a via ferrata. very exposed climbing passages required a high degree of confidence. In a way, the murky visibility helped to disguise the extent of danger, as I simply could not see the size of the drop. Needless to say, this hike must only be attempted by those with experience. Whereas climbing over rocks didn't cause me much trouble, unstable snowfields were a real headache. After what felt like an eternity, I finally arrived at the summit. I definitely had hoped for a reprieve, but the climb down required all the focus I could muster. Frankly, the continued high adrenaline boosts and numerous dangerous snowfields had properly worn me down, but suddenly my spirits were lifted.
I really didn't expect to have any more wildlife encounters today, but now that I am descending into the valley, I've cleared the cloud cover and I can see much further ahead, and what I've spotted is a small herd of chamois, at least 6 or 7 animals. Some of them are over there on the mountainside, some of them are just ahead. It's just an incredible day.
Chamois share their habitat with the ibex and can even be found on the same slopes. Encountering both these species on our last day was the icing on the cake of an unforgettable journey. After 3 weeks, driving more than 2,000 kilometers, our road trip through Slovenia came to an end. This small country does not do things by halves. Its mountains are majestic, its rivers a feast for the eyes, and its waterfalls utterly sublime. Evidently, Mother Nature experienced a burst of creativity when shaping these diverse landscapes. Combined with its scenic road network and thrilling hikes, Slovenia is an outdoor paradise for all those craving adventure.